Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. We did something we don't usually do, which is don't get a video up in a day, and that's just because we're prepping as best as we can and trying to turn our 3.75 acres into a homestead. Because we are in times that I have seen, personally, I've seen this since the 80s. I've always known this is coming. And back when Evolutionary Energy Arts started out, I shared this first in November of 2017. It was taken down. I re-upped it in January of 2018. So what you're looking at comes from January of 2018. And I just wanted to share it to think, again, look at where we are today. And look at what we've been saying. Our message has been extremely consistent. This is why we don't have millions of views. We don't get 500. Well, we do have millions. We actually have about 25 million views, but that's over 6,000 videos. And at one point in time, we were getting videos that had 100,000 plus views. We had one with 900,000 views. But the system has shut us down because, honestly, we've been dead on for the most part of the whole time. And I just wanted to share it with you. Think about where we are today. Think about where we were in January of 2018 when we first did this video. Thank you, everybody, for joining me at Evolutionary Energy Arts. And I wanted to share with you a series of dreams that I had. And part of the reason why I feel so compelled to analyze and overanalyze things is it's basically I'm trying to figure out the dreams that have come to me going back to 1985, I believe. It could have been 84, but I think it was 85 was the first time I had a dream about things that could happen. And it felt like it was kind of a warning dream. And I'll say right off the bat that I do believe that there are multiple timelines available to us, that we could jump into other timelines. Those of you that are familiar with quantum physics and the breaking science that we're now learning about the nature of reality, there is the thought that there is all these parallel timelines possible because we live in a multidimensional universe with just a myriad of different possibilities in front of us. And it's all up to us, to shift our focus to the right areas and to change, potentially negative outcomes into positive ones. But these dreams were very, very vivid and very clear. And they showed the same thing happening over the years. And I just got different glimpses of it from, I believe, slightly different perspectives of what could happen. And so when I first had the dream, it was in my first apartment, and it was 84, 85-ish, and I was living in Connecticut. And the thing that really hit me was it felt like I jumped 30, 40 years in the future. It was a much more advanced way of life, but not Jetsons-ish or anything, but just things were different than they were in the 80s, which obviously they are now. The thing that hit me about this, as I try to get to the right picture, the first thing that hit me was the fact that there were these things in the sky, and they just monitored everybody. And to me, they looked like giant eyes. They were roundish. It sort of looked a lot like this picture. And they just basically watched everything that everybody did. Every move that everybody made was being monitored and was watched. And to me, they looked a lot like this. They were basically eyes in the sky, and that's what I felt they were. So they were a means to watch us. Now, I don't know if what type of technology this was, or even if it was technology, in some sense they almost felt kind of alive in my dream. But you got to realize this is going way back to the time before drones and things like that. And so it was.
Yeah, just to comment on it, think back to if you guys are fans of Stranger Things. That's the time frame that we're talking about. It's just a very different world back then. It wasn't like it is now with drones everywhere.
Oh my gosh, we're able to see really what's unfolding at this point.
Yeah, so the technology was the first thing that really hit me.
It's just that there were these gigantic eyes everywhere watching everything. So every move anybody made at pretty much any time, you were being watched, constantly surveilled. And I don't know who was doing this, but it felt very ominous. And it felt like there was just no privacy. There was no such thing as privacy because everybody was constantly watched, constantly monitored. And again, this is going back into the mid 80s. And as drones have become popular, it's clicked with me that maybe what I was seeing was drones and the use of drones, but the use of drones to a degree where you're going to walk on a street and you're going to see a handful of them on every street. They're going to be hovering, just like, maybe 30 feet in the air, and just monitoring intersections, going, and if somebody is of note or interest, they'll follow you as they watch where you go from place to place.
This is kind of already what they have over in the big cities in China. I think this will be pretty much most countries after the war, again, after the war. So, getting glimpses of things that are currently transpiring and yet to transpire.
And they're everywhere. And we know there's cameras everywhere in our societies now. There's cameras, pretty much at every stoplight. They're everywhere. And so everything is being watched all the time. And this was the first thing that hit me from those dreams. It was just the fact that there was zero privacy. This was complete Big Brother system. Yet, I couldn't tell who was controlling these things. This little graph from the Wall Street Journal shows the level of concern about drones monitoring people's daily activities. And, we could see how the concern is pretty concerned, especially when it comes to our home. We almost accept now, like when we're in the workplace, we're going to get monitored. We pretty much accept when we're out in public, okay, we're going to be watched, If I pick my nose or scratch my butt, it's going to be on camera somewhere. Whatever happens, we're being watched. But we don't want to be watched at home, which is something that is happening now too. And it's only going to increase. But the dreams weren't just about that. The most ominous thing that I saw, and every time they came back, and I've had them definitely 4 times, and I suspect I've seen them more over the years. One of the things that I see is there is so many lights in the sky. I'm looking up and it's just past twilight, getting dark, and I see the sky and there is countless lights in the sky, and I don't know if they're meteors, I don't know if they're alien ships. I'm not sure what they are, but there is so many lights that there's thousands of them visible in the sky. And the thought that hits me is there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. There's just no escaping from whatever this is that's coming in. And that's the initial thing I see, is just so many lights, it just boggles the mind that everybody's in a stupor. Everybody is just walking around with their jaws wide open and eyes wide open and just kind of dazed, looking at that, knowing that there's so many of them, there's nowhere for you to go. it's just, it's overwhelming. There's so many of them. And there's just too many to count. And it's just a sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach that is kind of like that. When you're faced with something that you just can't believe, and it's potentially so scary that you're just kind of in shock. And so every direction you look, there's these lights, they're everywhere. And then I see the ocean and the sky. I'm able to see the ocean as well as the sky, and I see the lights in the sky, and then I see in the ocean. And in the ocean, there are ships, and I can make out that they are ships. And some of them look like those giant eyes that are watching everybody. And they're all coming towards the land. So they're not only in the sky, but they're also in the ocean.
And when I say in the ocean, I see under the water. There's ships in the water coming underwater. So not like a surface fleet, although they were everywhere, but more like a submerged fleet.
And they're also coming to the land from both above in the sky and from below in the ocean. And I'm able to see right into the ocean in the dream, all the way on down to the depths, and it's all clear. And so I could see that there are countless amounts of them in the ocean, thousands of them in the ocean, thousands in the sky. And
so if it was blue beam, are they also doing underwater holographs that nobody could really see? I don't think so.
And it's really a scary, scary feeling. And in these visions, they start to take form, and they don't look like military aircraft. They don't look like, aircraft carriers and destroyers and battleships and military helicopters, or, MiGs or F-22s, anything like that. They look more like UFOs, more like saucers and a variety of other shapes. And they seem to be kind of crystalline or shiny, metallic, coming. And there's, again, so many of them, it's just boggling the mind. And they're in the water, they're everywhere. They're just everywhere. And so then it hits me that it feels more like an alien invasion type thing. And it feels extremely surreal and very, very scary. And this dream has happened, as I said, at least 4 times that I can clearly remember. And it seems to happen in pretty big intervals, like 7 to 10 years.
But the one thing I'll say is I never see them actually attack us. I never actually see any sort of laser beams or missiles or anything like that from these lights. So could this actually be the real disclosure? It could be. It doesn't have to be a negative alien invasion, because again, I have had many visions of the war, which is transpiring now, and that is separate from this. They're 2 distinct things. I kind of feel that this, I don't know if it comes a little bit after, it comes during the war. Maybe it ends up stopping the war. Maybe it's after the war, even after the greater period in the resettling of things on Earth, possibly. But I never actually see them do any harm or damage.
And it's very disconcerting. And there's different details that come. In other parts of it, though, I do see troops, and I see helicopters especially, and I see parachutes being dropped. So there's also troops involved, and they're dropping soldiers, and there's military mobilization going on, and it feels like the United States is being invaded. and I could see them. I could see the troops, and I could feel that I'm in where I am. It's warm. And at that time, the very first time, I was living up in Connecticut, and then once I had the dream in South Carolina, that was the clearest. And where I'm seeing the troops, it's very warm. It feels like it's somewhere in the southeastern United States, where I currently am living. And I can see them clearly being dropped from helicopters en masse, and it's cloudy, and there's like helicopters that pop into these big dark, rain clouds that you get down south, and then pop out, and different troops dropping down, and people are running, and people are, becoming refugees, and they're moving away from the coast, and they're moving up, especially from South Florida, because it feels like South Florida is a place where troops have landed and not ours. So here it feels like the United States is being invaded. The only thing that more the logical mind is saying is basically Russia, China, and others are the ones doing it. But I didn't see those troops, but I knew and kept hearing from people that they've landed, down around Miami and down around the Everglades, and they're moving on up, and there's a huge refugee swell of people rushing away from that area and heading up northward, trying to get up away from where the troops have landed. And I also feel in those dreams there's troops coming in from like Mexico, as well as coming down from Alaska and Canada into the United States as well. And people are just in a panic, and people are just running and becoming refugees, and en masse. And I'm in there with them, and I'm helping carry this older man who had 2 feet blown off from something, some sort of explosion. So he's missing his feet, and I know we have to climb some steps, and it's really hard getting them up the steps wherever we are, and that was something that stuck with me. And so it's that part's always stuck with me. And then at that point, I remember hearing people say they're only 20 miles behind us and heading this way. So it was a feeling of, well, it's no way we're gonna outrun them with this huge refugee population. And it's just it was a very scary thing and scary dream. So definitely felt that troops were coming in from Alaska, Canada, coming down. Definitely felt troops coming in from Mexico and from Florida. And the first time I had this dream was before I did research into all the prophecies of what's gonna happen, like with Washington's vision. I had read the Bible at that point already many times, but I never really connected and thought about the fact that the United States could be Babylon the Great. And while I'm not a total Bible believer in the traditional sense, I do think there's a lot of things in there, a lot of things hidden, and there's a lot of things that are, just some things that you can't ignore. So when I read about Washington's vision, it hit me that, wow, that was just like what I had dreamed about and I've been dreaming about. Very, very similar. And then so many people have had these dreams. So many people have seen these things that it just feels like it's only a matter of time. And that may or may not be, because I do believe we have the power to shift reality. As we know from quantum physics, it's the observer that creates the world, basically. It's all by observation. And Buddha and his enlightenment, it was all about realizing that this is Maya, this world is Maya, which Maya is the word that means illusion. It's all really an illusion. We're living, as scientists now believe, in a computer simulation of sorts, a hologram, a reflection of a 2D reality that is actually much more real than this 3D reality. And so we could shift timelines, we could shift reality if enough people get together and really put their energy into it.
And that's the hope, and that's why we keep doing what we're doing. Because again, the realization that the prophecies that talk about Babylon the Great, that's really talking about the United States and the whole system that's been. And we know we're going to have, and we are in the middle of a great reset. We're also, watching the dissolution of one world order and the restructuring into a new world order. Yet the new world order, that what you might call the globalists, or you can say the forces of the Illuminati, secret services, secret societies, and that ultimately it leads to these beings that we might label as reptilian or Anunnaki, the combination thereof. Ultimately, again, this is what they've programmed into us to help us in our belief systems. We're helping bring that about because we expect it. Too many people, think these things are inevitable. And, right now it does seem like it could be inevitable. Yet at the same time, I think there's still time to change the paradigm. There is an awakening that's happening. And, there's tons of people taken to the streets in Israel right now demanding a regime change. If Netanyahu was truly to step down, would that make too much of a difference? It might make some difference. It would really have to be the removal of the whole governmental system. Same thing all around the world. So this has been totally set up. And there's billionaires that have bought bunkers down in Miami. What? Why would billionaires be buying bunkers with their own private armies down in Miami if Miami is to be invaded? If literally, this is part of the invasion force, because they're in on it, and they won't be targeted by the invading troops. The invading troops will be told to basically, watch these areas, leave these people alone, because they're in on it. You do not become a billionaire without being part of the system. It doesn't happen. All billionaires work for the system, and yet all billionaires have to also, if they have a higher self, they have to answer to their higher self too. So, I do think some of them are tortured. And yeah, absolutely. Every single act we do, there's karma that comes back on us. We have been used. The United States has been used to be the military police force of this dark cabal. And they have created so much negative karma. They know it's going to lash back and hit the United States. It's going to hit Israel. People are leaving Israel in droves. People are starting to understand what's happening. And the entire world is rising up, pretty much the entire world, against the United States and Israel. This is all part of the script that's been laid out before any of us were born. But we can still change the paradigm. It's also inevitable, I believe, that more and more people will wake up and, just refuse to go along with the system. And there are reports that there's troops in Israel, troops in the United States that are saying they are completely rejecting what's happening. They don't believe it should be happening. They think it's illegitimate. They think it's just a power grab, a resource grab for the ultra rich. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take the troops standing down and refusing to fight. And so that's what we put our effort and energy into, as well as, keeping yourself and your family and your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, going by being as self-sufficient as possible. This is really the critical time. I think we are in the darkest of the dark parts. We're just starting to enter that very, very dark phase, which how long is it going to last? I think, again, that's up in the air. That all depends on human consciousness. The way it looks right now, it might last up to a few years, 2-3 years. We'll have to see. This is the hope, that we can awaken as many as possible to shift the paradigm.
We got this.
We got this, guys. As always, we thank you for your support on Ko-Fi, Patreon, with memberships on YouTube. Please do leave comments, hype the video where you can. It's again, this is literally life and death. And this message that I was playing from you was initially given November of 2017, re-uploaded because it was taken down in January. of 2018. So what you're hearing there is what I had put into video back in January 2018, and then ask yourself today, does it seem to be happening like that? Does it sound like maybe, this is really what we're watching unfold? Share your thoughts. Much love, source bless, and namaste.
Namaste.